The date was July 8th, 2014. What unfolded that evening would forever change football history. In Belo Horizonte, Brazil faced Germany in a World Cup semifinal that transformed from a dream into a nightmare. This wasn't merely a defeat. It was the complete destruction of a footballing empire that had dominated the world for generations. Brazil entered this tournament carrying the hopes of 200 million people. They were the undisputed kings of the beautiful game, having claimed 5 World Cup victories across 1958, 1962, 1970, 1994, and 2002. Legends like Pelé, Romario, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho had elevated this nation to mythical status in world football. But 2014 was different. This time, Brazil was hosting the World Cup on home soil for the first time since 1950, when they suffered the devastating Maracanazo defeat to Uruguay in the final. The 2014 squad, led by the electrifying Neymar, seemed destined for greatness. The entire nation believed this was their moment to erase decades of pain and reclaim glory where it mattered most. However, fate had other plans. In the quarterfinal against Colombia, Neymar suffered a fractured vertebra, ending his tournament. To compound the crisis, Captain Thiago Silva received a suspension, leaving the team without their 2 most crucial leaders. While Brazil limped toward the semifinal, Germany approached the match as a perfectly calibrated machine. Their tournament journey had been methodical and ruthless. They demolished Portugal 4-0, navigated past Ghana in a thrilling encounter, and defeated the United States atop their group. In the knockout stages, they outlasted Algeria in extra time before clinically dispatching France 1-0. This German side wasn't just talented. They were hungry, organized, and utterly relentless. The Estadio Mineirão was a cauldron of emotion that evening. Over 70,000 Brazilian fans packed the stadium, their green and yellow creating a sea of hope and expectation. The chants echoed through the night as the nation prepared to witness what they believed would be another chapter in their glorious football story. When the match began, Brazil exploded from the blocks. They pressed high, attacked with purpose, and pinned Germany deep in their own half. In the opening minute, Fernandinho's tireless running won a corner kick, setting the tone for what seemed like it would be a magical Brazilian evening. Just 2 minutes later, Marcelo discovered space on the left flank, cut inside with precision, and unleashed a low drive that whistled just wide of the German goal. For those opening moments, Germany appeared rattled. They couldn't establish their rhythm, couldn't break free from Brazil's intensity. The crowd sensed blood, and their voices grew louder with each Brazilian attack. But then, in the 11th minute, everything changed. Germany earned a corner kick. Toni Kroos delivered the ball into the penalty area with surgical precision. There, completely unmarked and with all the time in the world, stood Thomas Müller. The Bayern Munich forward controlled the ball, steadied himself, and volleyed it past Julio Cesar. Germany had struck first, and the Estadio Mineirão fell silent for the first time that night. The Brazilian crowd refused to surrender. They chanted louder, waved their flags harder, and willed their team forward. This was Brazil. They would fight back. They had to fight back. But that hope lasted exactly 12 minutes. In the 23rd minute, Germany struck again with devastating efficiency. A quick passing sequence carved through Brazil's midfield like a knife through butter. Miroslav Klose received the ball in the box, fired a shot that Julio Cesar saved, but reacted fastest to bury the rebound. With that goal, Klose etched his name into World Cup folklore, becoming the tournament's all-time leading scorer with 16 goals, surpassing Brazil's own legend Ronaldo. The heartbreak was doubled. Not only were Brazil trailing 2-0, but they had watched a German player break a record that belonged to their greatest striker. In the stands, disbelief began to replace hope. But Germany wasn't finished. They were just getting started. Barely 60 seconds later, in the 24th minute, Brazil's defense crumbled entirely. Toni Kroos pounced on a loose ball outside the penalty area and hammered it into the net. 3 goals in 13 minutes. The Brazilian players stood motionless, their faces etched with shock and confusion. Before they could even process what was happening, disaster struck again. In the 26th minute, a catastrophic error in midfield left Brazil completely exposed. Kraus and Sami Khedira exchanged passes with the casual precision of a training ground drill, slicing through the defense as if it didn't exist. Kroos, calm as winter, tapped the ball into an empty net for his second goal of the evening. The Estadio Mineirão, once a fortress of Brazilian dreams, had become a theater of despair. Fans were crying, heads buried in their hands, some already heading for the exits. But the nightmare wasn't over. In the 29th minute, Sami Khedira added Germany's fifth goal with ruthless efficiency. The German machine passed through Brazil's helpless defense, and Khedira finished with the composure of a man taking a penalty in an empty stadium. In 18 minutes, Germany had destroyed Brazil's World Cup dream. The chants died. The flag stopped waving. The pride of a nation lay in ruins. The Brazilian players stood like statues as Germany celebrated their complete domination. The first half wasn't even over, but the empire Brazil had built over decades was already crumbling. As the halftime whistle blew, the scoreboard told a story nobody could have imagined. Germany 5, Brazil 0. The Brazilian players trudged off the pitch with their heads bowed, their faces marked by disbelief and devastation. In the stands, grown men wept openly while others sat in stunned silence, struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. What the world didn't know was that Germany had made a conscious decision at halftime. They chose not to humiliate Brazil further. German center back Mats Hummels later revealed that the team discussed how to approach the second half with respect and dignity. They would continue to play their game, but they wouldn't seek to destroy what remained of Brazilian pride. The second half began with a different rhythm. Germany controlled possession without the same ruthless intensity, but they weren't finished scoring. In the 69th minute, Philipp Lahm, Germany's captain, made a clever run down the right wing. He cut the ball back into the box where André Schürrle, fresh off the bench, was waiting with a simple tap-in. Germany 6, Brazil 0. The stadium was now almost silent except for the small group of German fans celebrating in the corner. For Brazil, this goal marked something painful. They had equaled their biggest ever defeat. But there was more pain to come. In the 79th minute, André Schürrle struck again, this time with a moment of pure brilliance. Mesut Ozil found him with a precise pass on the left, and from a tight angle, Schürrle unleashed a powerful shot that rattled the inside of the post before crossing the line. 7 goals. Germany 7, Brazil 0. This goal made history. Brazil had now suffered their worst defeat ever, and there were still minutes left to play. The German players celebrated quietly, fully aware of the devastation they had caused to a proud footballing nation. In the 90th minute, Brazil finally found the back of the net. Oscar scored what would prove to be a meaningless consolation goal. There was no celebration, no relief. Even the goalscorer looked dejected as he jogged back to the center circle. The final whistle brought merciful relief to a nightmare that had lasted 90 minutes, but would haunt Brazil for generations. For a team that had not lost a competitive home game since 1975, maintaining a 62-match unbeaten streak, this defeat was catastrophic beyond measure. The Brazilian players collapsed to the ground, some staring blankly at the sky, others breaking into uncontrollable tears. David Luiz, who had been tasked with leading the team in Thiago Silva's absence, apologized to the nation in his post-match interview through broken sobs. The fans in the stands were devastated. Many had left early, unable to watch the complete destruction of their dreams. Those who remained either cried or sat in stunned silence, struggling to process what they had witnessed. This wasn't just a football match, it was the end of an era. Germany's performance didn't just secure their place in the final, it rewrote World Cup history. The 7-1 scoreline represented the largest margin of victory ever recorded in a World Cup semifinal. No team had been dismantled like this at such a crucial stage of the tournament. For Brazil, it became their worst loss in history, surpassing a 6-0 defeat from 1920. Germany's attack was relentless and record-breaking. Between the 23rd and 29th minutes, they scored 4 goals, setting the record for the fastest 4 goals in World Cup history. By the 29th minute, they had added a fifth, breaking another record for the fastest 5 goals ever scored in the tournament. At halftime, their 5-0 lead represented the largest halftime advantage in World Cup history. By the final whistle, Germany's 7 goals made them the highest-scoring team in World Cup history, overtaking Brazil with 223 goals. The irony was cruel. Brazil had been surpassed by the very team that had destroyed their dreams on home soil. For Brazil, the records were devastating. This was the most goals ever conceded by a host nation in World Cup history. It marked the end of their 62-match unbeaten streak at home, a run that had lasted nearly 4 decades. The 7-1 scoreline wasn't just a defeat, it was a national trauma that would take years to heal. On their own soil, in front of their own fans, Brazil had suffered their worst defeat ever. For a team with 5 World Cup titles and decades of dominance, it marked the end of an era. The empire that had ruled world football for generations had fallen in the most spectacular and heartbreaking fashion imaginable. July 8, 2014, would forever be remembered as the day Brazil's footballing dynasty died in front of the world.